Alright, YouTube, it's time for Occult video number 57 on Soulmates or Twin Flames. A subject that a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about, let's face it. It can be touchy within certain schools of spirituality, even within like the Eastern paths. I've seen sort of the self-proclaimed Hindu yogis or masters. Some say, oh, yes, there is twin flame. Others say, no, it doesn't really exist. They're more skeptical. They're more, I guess, science-friendly, you could term it, or more secular. My own thoughts on the basic subject are as follows. Number one, basically ambivalence. I don't really give a fuck about the idea. It doesn't really it doesn't have anything to do with ritual practice, per se. So there's that. I'm more into the ritual side of the occult. As far as relationships go, it really goes down to just human emotion, human connection. It doesn't really, it's like when people ask me, oh, how can I get this person to love me? I can't get them to love you. There's no ritual for that. You got to go out and approach the person. You got to try to understand other people. And most often when people are interested in that sort of thing anyway, they're seeking the wrong person. They're seeking somebody that's incompatible. They're physically attracted to them. They don't know anything necessarily even like emotionally about them. They may never have even spoken to them. I mean, the person might be a complete dumbass or a complete asshole. They don't even know. They look at this person, oh, they're so pretty. Oh, he's so handsome or something like that. And they want to get with this person. What's the fucking point? That's just a booty call. It has nothing to do with a long-term relationship. You know, the pussy game may be ridiculous, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it pans out long-term. To use a little bit of a meme there. But on the concept of soulmates from a spiritual perspective, a purely occult perspective, there is such a thing spoken of within certain occult paths. That is a person that's out there that's sort of a twin to you, spiritually speaking. The basic concept is like a soul has been split apart during, I guess, the reincarnation process. Now the two halves have to find each other in order to be truly blissful, truly spiritually advanced, truly enjoy their life. They have to come together, I guess, maybe have kids or be in a relationship, fulfill their sacral chakra or something like that, I suppose. I'm not a big believer in this concept. I think that the soul, as envisioned under these systems, is discrete. It's not split apart. So that part of it I definitely wouldn't believe in. As far as people being sort of fated to be with you, I think it's circumstance and chance, but also will. I think if a person has a strong enough will, they will find a person appropriate for them. But keep this in mind. There are billions and billions of humans on this planet, and there are only a certain number of characteristics physically, mentally, and emotionally that they can have. There are probably multiple people out there that if you communicated with everyone, if time were stopped and you could communicate with each person in the world that you could possibly be interested with, according to your sexual proclivities, I suppose, first and foremost, you know, whether you're into males and females or just one or the other or whatever you're into, you would eventually find that a certain relatively small group of those people would be extremely appropriate to the things that you yourself are interested in. Now, there's also the fact that people change over time. For instance, when I look back at myself, maybe half a decade ago, my beliefs were not the same. The things that I was interested in doing weren't the same. My form of employment wasn't the same. My political leanings weren't the same. Many of the things that that have any importance now that I'm delve into, they weren't the same half a decade ago. So if I had met somebody back then that was inappropriate for me at the time, maybe now they're appropriate for me, and vice versa. Maybe somebody that I had met or could have met half a decade ago, that at the time it would seem like, oh, well, this is a match made in heaven. This person's so much like me. All of a sudden, that's no longer the case. This is how divorces happen. I've been through one myself. I don't believe in soulmates in the sense of somebody who is spiritually so similar to you, so attached to you in some weird mystical way, that they come into your life and never let go, and you live happily ever after. Sort of the pie in the sky stuff. I know it's very nice to think about. Well, there's this one other person out there that, well, what if you're fucking paraplegic and you don't travel anywhere and you just die alone, and nobody gives a fuck about you? There are plenty of people who live such a lifestyle. There are people in the world that are completely cut off from the outside world. They live in some extreme rural area of some extreme third world country, or they're a member of an uncontacted tribe. It's like the old paradox about what of people who never learned about Jesus or Christianity, like the uncontacted tribes that were spoken of, like in Catholicism, and they have this big discussion. Well, can they actually go to heaven? They didn't worship Jesus. They never practiced Catholicism or any form of Christianity. And some say, of course, well, they're hellbound. You know, God must have fated them to hell. It's terrible, but, you know, who are we to question the Lord? Others say, well, no, I mean, they never learned about it, so they're without sin. They're more like they're fucking animals or something like that. It's basically the same principle at work with soulmates. If you believed in such a thing, you would have to assume that the entire world was completely divinely inspired and engineered solely to find people their right partners. Obviously, looking at reality, we find the vast majority of people in this world never do. They either don't have a partner at all, or they never have a lasting partner, or they never have a partner they're really fully comfortable with. We see this especially in the West, where there aren't arranged marriages and so forth. In a culture with arranged marriage and stuff, the female usually, not always, but almost always the female, sort of puts up with whoever she's sold to. You know, in the Islamic world, the women are just cattle and they're fucking sold to some dude, usually twice their age, who just fucking rapes them over and over. But they learn to deal with it, I guess, and live like what they consider a normal existence, and this is fine to some extent. They survive, I suppose. They have something to eat and a bed to lay in, even if they're raped in it every night. But in the Western world, of course, it's not that way. People have the choice who they want to be in a relationship with. And, of course, you have divorce and all of these other things that go on. I think part of that is that most people are idiots and don't have realistic expectations about what they want. Most people don't even know anything about themselves, so how the fuck are they supposed to form a lasting relationship? As far as soulmates go, though, I'm mostly ambivalent on the topic. As far as I'm concerned, my work takes precedence over everything else. My independence takes precedence. That is, the most important things in my life are solo ventures. They don't involve anybody else, or they don't need to involve anybody else. Those are the things that I find important, that I want to work on. If I'm to be with anyone, they'd have to fit within that general principle. They'd have to be comfortable with that fact. If they're not, there's going to be a fucking problem. Other people, many other people, they have similar sort of caveats to being with them. That many times somebody who would otherwise be perfectly compatible is completely incompatible on one of those general principles. I think the concept of soulmates begins to fall apart, though, simply when you observe reality. You observe that most people are in multiple relationships that don't pan out. They might not necessarily, they might not be unhappy relationships. They might be quite fulfilling, that they just don't pan out long term. They're not quite there. You know, the sex is good, but we didn't really have a deeper connection. Or we had a really good connection, but, you know, we didn't get along because of our families or something like that. So I don't know. I don't really believe in the soulmate stuff for the most part. I mean, I'm open-minded to the idea that some really weird concept might be at work there, but it would be really confusing, and it would be far more convoluted, far less simplistic than the idea of soulmates that most people endorse. That is, the simplistic concept that people have is obviously completely wrong. It's like the simplistic concept of the Christian God. This being obviously does not exist. There is 0% chance that this being is real. But as far as the idea of a deity, of course, we can't necessarily say for sure. It depends on how we define and try to constrain the meaning of such a being. It's the same with the concept of twin flames or soulmates. That's my thoughts anyway, and this is largely my opinion, of course. There are various other opinions that go forth and talk about these things, but when I observe reality as it really is, unminced, unbiased approach here, I choose to believe it's fairly unlikely, but ultimately remain ambivalent. That's about all. Peace out.